Penelope Penny Ainsworth had always existed on the edges, a quiet observer rather than a participant. She moved through the halls of Crestwood High with the grace of a shadow, understanding that blending in was the best way to stay safe. Just over 5 feet tall and weighing barely 100 pounds, Penny favored dark, loose clothing and kept her auburn hair in a simple braid, her bright blue eyes always watchful, absorbing everything without giving anything away. Her backpack, filled with well-worn books, was always clutched tightly to her chest, a shield against the world. Unbeknownst to her classmates, Penny had spent years honing her skills at the Dragon's Den, her grandfather's dojo in upstate New York. Under the guidance of Arthur Art Ainsworth, a former Green Beret with a quiet intensity, she had mastered Aikido, become adept at judo, and developed a proficiency in Krav Maga that would rival seasoned professionals. Art, a man who understood the power he imparted, had taught her that true strength lay in self-control, not aggression. He had instilled in her the importance of avoiding conflict, using her abilities only as a last resort, and never initiating violence. The torment began during Penny's first week at Crestwood, a sprawling brick campus that housed thousands of students from across the district. Her family had relocated from a quiet town after her mother's promotion led them to this bustling city, and Penny found herself navigating a new social landscape where alliances were already forged. The transition from her old school, where she was just another face, to this new environment where she was the outsider had been unsettling. The ringleader was Brittany Britt Kensington, a popular senior with perfectly styled brunette hair and a calculating smile who held court over the school's social hierarchy. Nearly 6 feet tall, Britt possessed the toned physique of a dedicated cheerleader and carried herself with an air of entitlement. Her 2 devoted sidekicks, Tiffany Tiff Sterling and Ashley Ash Price, were always eager to please, ready to amplify Britt's cruel jokes and execute her schemes. Tiff, a willowy blonde with a sharp wit, secured her place by crafting witty insults that could dismantle anyone's confidence. Ash, a petite brunette desperate to impress, was always ready to escalate Britt's cruelty. From the start, they saw Penny as an easy target, someone who wouldn't retaliate and whose quiet nature made her an ideal source of entertainment. It was Tiff who first noticed Penny sitting alone in the courtyard, sketching in a worn notebook. It was Ash who remarked on Penny's unfashionable clothing, noting with satisfaction how the new girl seemed to shrink under scrutiny. And it was Britt who declared Penny their new plaything, a decision she would soon regret. The harassment began subtly, almost innocently. Britt would accidentally knock Penny's sketchbook from her hands in the hallway, sending pencils and drawings scattering across the floor as students stepped over them without a second glance. The collision appeared accidental, a simple moment of clumsiness in the crowded corridor, but Penny saw the glint of satisfaction in Britt's eyes. Tiff would make snide remarks about Penny's artwork when she thought no one was listening, whispering to Ash about how the new girl's drawings looked like something a child would create. Her voice carried just far enough for Penny to hear, each word a calculated jab at her already fragile self-esteem. Ash, not to be outdone, would accidentally trip Penny in the lunch line, sending her tray crashing to the floor and splattering food on her clothes. Sometimes she would time it perfectly so that Penny's belongings would spill just as the line moved forward, creating a chaotic mess that fueled Ash's malicious glee. Penny endured these incidents silently, remembering Art's teachings about avoiding unnecessary confrontation and using her skills only when absolutely necessary. Over the following weeks, the harassment intensified, becoming more frequent and more elaborate as the trio grew bolder. During lunch, Britt would lead her posse to Penny's table, where she sat alone drawing, and make loud pronouncements about how sad it was that some people had no friends. They would laugh as they walked away, their voices echoing across the cafeteria and drawing stares from other students who were relieved to not be the target. Penny would continue sketching, her face burning with shame, the lines on the page blurring as tears welled in her eyes. In art class, Tiff would accidentally spill paint on Penny's canvas, ruining hours of work and leaving a sticky mess that was impossible to clean up. She would apologize with feigned sincerity while Britt and Ash snickered behind their hands. The damage was often irreparable, but when Penny complained to the teacher, Tiff would claim it was an accident and point to her artistic talent as evidence of her good intentions. The teacher, overwhelmed by the demands of the class, would accept the explanation and move on, leaving Penny to salvage what she could in silence. The art studio became another arena where Ash would hide Penny's supplies while she worked, forcing her to scramble to find them before the end of class. Sometimes she would move them to a different table. Sometimes she would stash them in the trash. And once she even threw them out the window, forcing Penny to retrieve them from the muddy ground below while other students watched and laughed. The humiliation was intentional and systematic, designed to break Penny's spirit and reinforce Britt's dominance. Penny's internal conflict grew with each passing day, a constant tug-of-war between her desire for peace and her mounting frustration. She knew she could put an end to this torment instantly, could show these girls exactly what she was capable of, but Art's words echoed in her mind constantly. He had taught her that martial arts were for protection, not retribution. She remembered the countless hours they had spent discussing the responsibility that came with her training, how she must never be the instigator, and how violence should always be the last resort. Art had made her promise that she would never use her skills to harm someone unless her life was truly in danger, and Penny took that promise seriously, even as her tormentors made her life increasingly unbearable. The emotional strain of the constant harassment began to seep into every aspect of Penny's life. She dreaded going to school, lying awake at night, envisioning new forms of humiliation. Her grades began to slip as she struggled to focus on her studies while constantly anticipating the next attack. She stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria, instead seeking refuge in the library where she could find solace among the books. Her parents noticed the change in her behavior, but attributed it to the stress of adjusting to a new school, never suspecting the systematic abuse their daughter endured. The breaking point arrived on a Wednesday afternoon in early November when the crisp air carried the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves. She was walking to her locker after art class when she saw Britt, Tiff and Ash approaching from the opposite direction, their expressions predatory and gleeful. The hallway was bustling with students heading to their next class, creating the perfect stage for whatever humiliation the trio had concocted. Penny tried to avoid eye contact and walk past them, but Britt stepped directly into her path, forcing her to stop. The encounter was deliberate, calculated, and undeniably hostile. Other students began to slow down, sensing the impending drama. Penny felt their gazes, heard the whispers and excited murmurs as word spread that something was about to happen. She felt trapped, like a cornered animal, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. "Well, well, well," Britt said, her voice amplified by the hallway's acoustics. "If it isn't little Penny scurrying through the halls like a scared rabbit." Tiff and Ash flanked her, forming a semicircle that boxed Penny against the lockers. Their positions were strategic, blocking any escape while ensuring Penny would be the center of attention. "You know, girls," Britt continued, pausing for dramatic effect and ensuring she had everyone's attention, "I've been giving our little artist some thought, and I've reached a conclusion." Her smile was cruel, the expression of someone who derived pleasure from inflicting pain. "I think Penny here is hiding something under all those baggy clothes. What do you think? Maybe she's not as innocent as she pretends to be." The crowd of students swelled, forming a loose ring around the confrontation. Penny felt her heart race as she realized Britt was escalating beyond verbal harassment. The air crackled with anticipation, charged with the thrill of witnessing someone else's suffering. She clutched her sketchbook tighter and tried to sidestep the girls, but Tiff moved to block her, while Ash positioned herself on the other side. The hallway fell silent, except for Penny's shallow breaths and the occasional whisper from the onlookers. "I bet she's wearing something really embarrassing under that frumpy outfit," Tiff chimed in, her voice dripping with venom. "Maybe we should help her show everyone what she's really like." Her sharp features were flushed with excitement, her eyes gleaming with the prospect of pushing their bullying to a new level. Ash nodded eagerly, her delicate features animated as she practically bounced with anticipation, her phone already in hand, ready to document the event. Penny's stomach dropped as she understood their plan, the extent of their intended humiliation becoming clear. She took a step backward, feeling the cold metal of the lockers against her back, the unyielding surface eliminating any chance of escape. The trap was set, the stage prepared for her public degradation. "Please," Penny whispered, her voice barely audible above the crowd's murmur, "just leave me alone." But her plea only emboldened the girls, who exchanged knowing glances and moved closer. The desperation in her voice was like music to their ears, confirming that they had found her breaking point and were about to shatter it. Britt reached toward Penny's waistband, her fingers closing in with malicious intent. "Come on, Penny," she said with a wicked grin, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't be shy. Let's see what you're hiding under there." The threat was clear, the intention unmistakable, and Penny felt a surge of panic as she realized Britt intended to humiliate her in the most degrading way possible in front of the entire school. The attack was swift, executed with the practiced efficiency of seasoned tormentors. Britt lunged for Penny's clothing, while Tiff grabbed her wrists to prevent her from defending herself, her grip surprisingly strong. Ash positioned herself to block any escape, her phone poised to record the humiliation for posterity. Penny felt cornered and exposed as Britt tried to yank at her clothing, her face contorted with effort and cruel amusement. The onlookers began to laugh and cheer, their phones materializing as they anticipated capturing the moment. The sound of their laughter was like a physical blow, each cruel giggle a reminder of her isolation. She saw the excitement in their eyes, the way they leaned forward to witness her humiliation, and she realized this was entertainment for them, a break from the monotony of their day. But something inside Penny snapped, a dam breaking under the weight of weeks of accumulated pain and humiliation. All the silent endurance, all the times she had walked away when she could have fought back, all the nights she had cried herself to sleep, wondering why she was the target, coalesced into a searing fury that incinerated her restraint. She felt Art's training awaken, years of discipline and technique surging through her body, muscle memory taking over as her mind turned cold and focused. Her right hand shot out in a blur, striking Britt squarely in the sternum with a perfectly executed palm strike, the technique devastating in its precision. Britt's eyes widened in shock and pain as the air left her lungs, her threatening advance halting instantly as she doubled over, gasping for breath. The sound she made was a strangled wheeze, a noise that cut through the crowd's laughter and replaced it with stunned silence. Before Tiff could react, before she could even register that her friend was hurt, Penny had twisted free of her grasp with a fluid motion that would have impressed Art. Her elbow arced up and around, connecting with Tiff's jaw with a sharp impact, the strike precise and calculated to cause maximum discomfort without lasting damage. Tiff stumbled backward, her face pale with shock and pain, her hands clutching her jaw as she tried to comprehend what had just happened. The crowd fell silent as Penny straightened, her entire demeanor transformed. The shy, frightened girl who had been their victim had vanished, replaced by someone who moved with the controlled grace of a trained warrior. Her stance was balanced and ready, her eyes sharp and focused, her breathing steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. Ash, who had been so confident moments before, now recoiled as she saw the change in Penny's eyes, the cold resolve that had replaced the fear. "You want to see what I'm hiding?" Penny said, her voice calm and dangerous, carrying across the hushed hallway with the authority of someone who had found her strength. "Let me show you." What followed was a demonstration of controlled power, a display of skill and technique that left no doubt about Penny's capabilities. She moved with the efficiency of someone who had spent years honing her craft, each move precise and calculated for maximum effect. Art had taught her well, and every lesson, every hour of training, every bruise and ache from years of practice came together in this moment of perfect execution. Britt, still struggling to breathe, tried to stand and regain her composure, but Penny was already moving. A swift leg sweep sent Britt crashing to the floor, her legs tangling as she landed hard on her back, her brunette hair splaying across the linoleum like a fallen curtain. The impact knocked the remaining air from her lungs, leaving her stunned and helpless as she stared up at the ceiling lights in disbelief. Tiff, still clutching her jaw, tried to grab Penny from behind, thinking she could use her superior size to overpower the smaller girl. But Penny had anticipated the move, her training allowing her to sense the attack before it came. She pivoted, grabbed Tiff's arm, and used the blonde's own momentum against her in a textbook Aikido throw, sending her flying over Penny's shoulder. Tiff hit the floor hard, her body landing with a satisfying thud next to her friend. Ash, seeing her two companions incapacitated, tried to flee, her courage failing as she realized this was not going according to plan. But Penny was faster, her hand shooting out to catch Ash's ankle in a grip that felt like iron. A simple twist and pull brought Ash down hard, her phone skittering across the floor as she joined her friends in their undignified heap on the hallway linoleum. The entire confrontation lasted less than a minute, but in that time, Penny had completely reversed the power dynamic that had defined her experience at Crestwood High. The three girls who had tormented her for weeks, who had made her life miserable, now lay on the floor in various states of pain and humiliation, while Penny stood over them, barely ruffled. Her breathing was steady, her posture relaxed but alert, and there was a quiet strength about her that spoke of complete control. The crowd of students stared in shock, their phones forgotten as they tried to process what they had witnessed. The quiet new girl, the one they had dismissed as weak and insignificant, had just dismantled three of the school's most notorious bullies with an efficiency that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The silence was deafening, broken only by Britt's labored breathing and Tiff's quiet whimpers. "Let me make something clear," Penny said, her voice carrying to every corner of the silent hallway with the authority of someone who had found her voice and wasn't afraid to use it. "I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted to be left alone to pursue my interests and live my life in peace. But you three decided that wasn't going to happen. You decided I was weak, that I was an easy target, that I would just endure whatever you threw at me." She looked down at Britt, who was still gasping for breath on the floor, her face flushed with exertion and embarrassment. "You were wrong." The aftermath of the confrontation spread through Crestwood like wildfire, fueled by social media and whispered rumors. Within hours, everyone knew about the quiet new girl who had taken down three of the school's meanest girls in a matter of moments. The video footage captured by several students showcased Penny's remarkable skills, and word quickly spread about her martial arts background and the systematic bullying that had led to the confrontation. Teachers who had previously overlooked the bullying, who had dismissed Penny's quiet nature as shyness, suddenly took notice of what had been happening. Principal Thompson, a stern woman with a no-nonsense attitude, summoned Penny to her office for a long discussion. The conversation lasted over an hour, with Penny recounting her experience calmly and honestly, detailing months of harassment and the final assault that had triggered her response. Penny presented the principal with evidence of Britt's intended actions, and several witnesses came forward to confirm her account of the systematic abuse she had endured. Students who had been too afraid to speak up now found their voices, telling Principal Thompson about the months of harassment they had witnessed. The picture that emerged was one of sustained psychological torment, deliberate cruelty that had been allowed to fester because no one had intervened. While the principal was obligated to suspend all 4 students involved in the physical altercation, Penny's suspension was reduced to a single day after the full extent of the bullying was revealed. Britt, Tiff, and Ash each received a week-long suspension and mandatory anger management classes, along with a formal reprimand that would be placed on their permanent records. The school also implemented stricter policies regarding bullying and harassment, with harsher consequences for those who engaged in such behavior. Penny's status at school changed instantly, like stepping from darkness into light. Students who had once ignored her now approached her with respect and curiosity, eager to learn more about the quiet girl who possessed such extraordinary abilities. The art club, which had been struggling to attract members, suddenly found itself with a waiting list after Penny agreed to join and offer her expertise. Her unique talents and patient teaching style quickly made her one of the most sought-after students in the school. Teachers began to see her as a leader rather than a victim, and she found herself invited to participate in school activities that had previously been inaccessible. The debate team recruited her for her analytical mind and calm demeanor. The student government asked her to serve on the anti-bullying committee, and even the dance team expressed interest in her athletic prowess. Penny discovered a knack for leadership and a natural ability to inspire confidence in others. But perhaps the most profound change occurred within Penny herself. The confrontation had forced her to reconcile Art's teachings about restraint with the need to defend herself. She had learned that sometimes, despite our best intentions to avoid conflict, we must be prepared to fight for our dignity and well-being. The experience had taught her the difference between being a victim and being at peace, between avoiding confrontation and allowing ourselves to be destroyed by it. Art, upon learning of the incident through a phone call from Penny's parents, expressed his pride in her actions. He noted that she had used only the force necessary to stop the attack and had demonstrated remarkable control under pressure. He reminded her that true martial artists never seek conflict, but they also never allow themselves to be victims when they have the power to protect themselves. The balance between these two principles was the hallmark of a true warrior, and Penny had found that balance in the most challenging circumstances. Britt, Tiff, and Ash returned to school changed as well, their week-long suspension having provided them with time to contemplate their actions and their consequences. The humiliation of being defeated by someone they had deemed weak had shattered their confidence and forced them to reevaluate their behavior. They discovered that their social standing had been damaged by the incident, with many students viewing them as cowards who had preyed on someone smaller and weaker. Britt, in particular, appeared to have learned a valuable lesson about the consequences of bullying. The girl who had once reigned over the school's social scene now found herself isolated and ostracized, her former friends having distanced themselves from her after the incident. She approached Penny during lunch one day, her usual arrogance replaced by something that resembled genuine regret. "I wanted to apologize," Britt said softly, her voice barely audible as she stood beside Penny's table. "What we did to you was wrong, and you had every right to defend yourself. I know it doesn't excuse anything, but I hope you can forgive us someday." Penny gazed at her former tormentor for a long moment, searching for sincerity in her eyes, before nodding slowly. "I forgive you," she said simply, "but I won't forget. And I hope you won't either." The incident at Crestwood became a catalyst for change, transforming the school's culture and promoting greater awareness of the impact of bullying. Teachers began to take reports of harassment more seriously, implementing new procedures for investigating and addressing such incidents. Students became more conscious of the consequences of their actions and began to intervene when they witnessed bullying rather than remaining silent bystanders. As Penny walked through the halls of Crestwood in the weeks that followed, she carried herself with a newfound confidence. The shy, frightened girl who had once tried to disappear into the crowd had been replaced by someone who understood her own strength and wasn't afraid to use it when necessary. She had learned that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from avoiding conflict, but from standing up for yourself when you have no other choice. The quiet girl who had once been an easy target had become a force to be reckoned with, and everyone at Crestwood knew it. But more importantly, Penny had learned that true strength comes not from the ability to inflict harm, but from the wisdom to know when and how to protect yourself. She had confronted her bullies and emerged victorious, not through vengeance or cruelty, but through the simple act of refusing to be a victim any longer. 31,006 characters.